Hello there, friend, and welcome back to the podcast. I am joined now again by one of my students. This is Courtney slash better known as DJ Dazzler?
Sure. Yeah, let's go with it.
Okay, Courtney, better known as DJ Dazzler. Courtney, you are a DJ in the Los Angeles area, correct?
Correct.
Yes, I will say, based on what you've told me, that you are not only a student of mine, but an avid listener of the podcast, which is always fun.
Definitely. And catching you in other platforms as well, Clubhouse and the works.
Yeah, Clubhouse, Facebook groups. We're in a lot of the same spaces, so It's fun. Okay, so what this podcast episode is, if you haven't heard any of my student interviews before, this is us talking about Courtney's journey and her progress in my signature program, Unfuck Your Biz. When I started doing these podcasts, they felt a little bit uncomfortable because I was like, do I really want to give people a half an hour sales pitch on the program? And what I ended up finding out was it's not always necessarily a sales pitch, but people are genuinely curious what other people's process has been like, why they joined the program, and what they got out of it. Because if you're thinking like, oh, I'm interested in joining the program, but I don't really know if it's right for me, these podcast episodes are going to help you. It'll either help you say yes, help you say no. Either way, that's totally fine. But anyhow, I hope you enjoy the show. So Courtney, let's start out by just having you tell my audience a little bit about your business. So What it is that you do and when you got started.
I am a DJ by trade. I have been doing this for over 10 years. It still cannot feel like it feels like a decade that I've been doing this. So I'm in the Los Angeles area, pivoting to doing all the virtual event type of things given the times. And really how I got to where I am now and how we know each other is me wanting to fix the things that need to be fixed. And this was last year is when I started your program.
Okay, so as a DJ in LA, like I know that you do weddings and that's where a lot of our audience overlaps, but you also are DJing outside of weddings, right? So do you do like clubs, live events? What does that look like?
Thanks so much for asking that. A lot of people, because our circles know me in the wedding circuit, I do a great deal of celebrity events, corporate functions. So think in the lines of like American Express's event, MasterCard's event, the Grammy, like partner parties. I've DJ'd at Anaheim Angels Stadium. And then some of my celebrity clients, I've performed with Bon Jovi, Jason Derulo, Gabrielle Union, Tamar Braxton, Vanessa Manillo, and nightclubs throughout the country, given when we are open. And also just events that really congregate people, you know? So like,
yeah, I saw that one video you posted where you were DJing on a stage and you were playing a Jason Derulo song, and Jason Derulo.
It was Jason Derulo.
Yeah, and he was in the front row, like dancing to the song. It looked like you were at like a drive-in movie theater, but I'm assuming it was like a COVID like outdoor concert.
It was. So I worked with Disney. They had their rollout of a couple of films through Disney Plus. And they had, so I've done work with Jason Derulo before, and then I don't know how he was affiliated with the event. It was for the world premiere of Clouds. And so they were having their VIPs, so it hadn't been released yet. Like it was the premiere, and they did it in a hangar in Santa Monica because open air, and that's how they wanted to get creative in getting people together for this moment. So they had maybe about 100 tickets for true fans to access, and then they had their VIPs up front, and they were socially distanced by car. But Disney knows how to put on an experience. It's Disney, so you drive in, they take your photo in your car at the backdrop. They serve you like amazing food that's boxed. Like it's an experience. So and to them, having a DJ is like a mandatory thing for them.
That sounds super fun. To me, when I think of DJs, I always think of like doing club events from like midnight until 4 a.m. Yeah. And that makes me feel exhausted, but it sounds like you're doing a lot more like corporate events that are a little bit earlier. But do most DJs like get started in that avenue? They either start
not at all. I think it's very much when you get started, it's like you're doing your cousin's backyard party in their house at their house, you know what I mean? And I think a big problem with our industry is a lot of professionals stay in that route when there's like a huge, market in different industries to tap into, you know what I mean? So I think because I have I've been in the professional world outside creativity and outside my trade. And I was able to fuse those worlds together in terms of, I know how to speak to corporate types of clients. I know how to speak to wedding clients. I also know how to speak to the nightclub, want to get slothed in the nightclub and get drunk clientele. So I think the identity of a DJ is, even in movies, film, and print media, is usually, the DJ at a nightclub, that prime slot, trying to get everyone dancing and drunk in Vegas or something.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess it's very, very, you're obviously doing a very different service for each of these different events. But
yes.
Whenever I think about this, I'm like, oh my God, Courtney, you should have seen me dancing when I was young, gay, 21 and drunk in college. It was so much fun. And I've been like, since COVID started, like my husband and I, like, we don't really go out. We're like pretty old at heart, but I keep telling him, I was like, I would give almost anything to be able to like go to a gay club right now and just dance to Lady Gaga's Rain on Me on repeat for like 3 hours.
I love that song. I play that song in a lot of my corporate events. I love that song.
It's so good. It's on my running playlist. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, we'll pivot. We should talk more about your backstory. So I think it's the DJing industry is super, super interesting. But you were in business for 10. Okay. So you've been in business for 10 full years. You joined
as a trade. I'll clarify. So as a trade, yes, service. That's how long I've known, but that's like a 2-part question for me, because how long have I treated my business as a legit business? That's another answer, how I actually ended up to you, because even to now, I've always had a stable job along with me being a DJ. So in its early, developments, I treated DJing as a side thing, a hobby, but was kind of making money off it, but definitely wasn't official in any sense, Yeah.
Okay. So I always find that to be really fascinating, because I hear this a lot. People will say, well, technically I've only really been in business for 4 years. And in my mind, I'm always thinking, well, what the fuck does that mean? And because in my mind, I'm always like, you were in business before that. You probably just like, not you, Courtney, but other people, like you probably just weren't paying taxes or filing them.
No, Courtney, you got it. That's
Courtney. I was like, I think it's different for me because I came straight out of law school to start my business. And I also knew long-term, this is going to be my full-time job. I think when people start as like a hobby or a side hustle, they don't think it's going to be a full-time job. So maybe they don't consider it a business.
I also think in the creative sense, I think there's a threshold and a pivot where people mentally think, oh, I'm doing this for real, especially in like creative type of trades as well. So like if you want to say like skill level, how long I've been doing this, I'd say over 10 years. But it's like, when did it actually start being a business? That is such a gray area for me.
Got it. So it's like when you're talking to your clients, when you're talking to prospective clients, you tell them you've been a DJ for 10 years because that's your experience. And when you're talking to the IRS, you've only had a business for 3 years.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, what I'm curious about, tell us about like what you were doing when you like mentally were in the space that you would have said, oh, I don't really have a business. Like what did it look like at that point in time for those few years?
Sure. I think being really obsessive of my identity, like the stuff of how my brand projected, and I wasn't seriously taking it in that mental state, but just like, I would spend months and months and months and trying to get a logo and business cards. And I'm like, oh, wow, we are so freaking official, and a janky ass GoDaddy.com website. You know what I mean? Like that was like the medal of honor of like, oh, I have a business, nothing like, it was certainly not LLC then, payments in cash, you know what I mean? Like, so really.
Did you have contracts?
I had ish, like invoice, like really janky templated invoices.
You maybe had like a one-pager contract, and
one-page contract. Like, don't forget to make, but it wasn't as really detailed out as it is now.
Right.
So, that was like growing pains, really, and I actually went to trade school to learn how to DJ, and it was and they started pivoting after my time there. Like, oh, let's talk about business stuff, but it's not. Really, there should be an area where they really teach like creatives on how to make this thing a business, because it's so concentrated on just a trade that people plateau in a certain way. So that's where I ended up for a couple of years, because I didn't even know these concepts up until I took your course.
Well, I mean, like that's true in pretty much every trade, right? This is interesting. On our call, yeah, like on our student alumni call we had yesterday, it was really interesting when Jay Scott, one of our fellow students, said that they wanted to perhaps bring me in to do some training for Miss Indiana USA on how to manage the legal and tax side of the business. So I think it's fascinating. People are starting to think about this more and more, but certainly like I talked to so many people who went to graphic design school, art school.
Right. Well, we had you recently on our community's clubhouse, and that was very, just a tip of the iceberg conversation. And I'd say 85, 90% of those were DJs, and they were just stunned at the things that you said. Like even me in my early stages of your course, my quarterlies, like what is that?
Like quarterly taxes? What?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know that.
Because I would imagine, Courtney, in your first few years when you had like that maybe one-pager contract, the invoice, you were taking the money in cash. Were you just taking the money in cash and then using that cash to buy your groceries? Like, did you deposit it into your personal bank account? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was going into my personal bank account, or I would just hang on to it. And really, as I look at my tenure of being a DJ or the business aspect of it, I have a very interesting relationship with money, and it opened my eyes as I'm in your alumni program, as I've left your course, and that has now opened me to do other courses to reinvest in myself. It really took me back to my relationship with money. Like I'm frugal in some ways, so I'm not frivolous, but I'm also not putting it into the right things. I also back then didn't have a concept of where's this money coming from and where is it going? So, and it initially made me feel constantly broke, or I didn't have money, when maybe I did. I just don't know. It wasn't organized in any form.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot, especially when we're getting paid in cash. Like this is how I felt when I was a server. Very different business. I was getting paid a lot less than your DJ gigs, I can promise you. But you get the money, you spend it. And then I remember at one point in time, I was feeling really broke. So I went around my house and combed through all my pockets and scrounged up all my money, because I was trying to go on spring break with my friends. I needed some money, and I ended up getting like $350, and I was like, all this cash was just sitting around. So it's true though, when we don't account for our money, we have no idea how much we have.
Right.
And for the people listening, like Courtney, you know this already, but when it comes to taking that cash, or, taking our client payments, putting it in a business bank account, doing our bookkeeping, we obviously have to do this for tax purposes, but we also need to know the profitability of our business just to know whether we're making money. And then when it comes to the tax side, the thing is people don't think about this part, but it's the aspect of if you ever get audited, or if you get a letter from the IRS, they're going to basically take any information that they can gather to assume what your income was if you have not accounted for it yourself. And they almost always are going to massively overestimate. So people always think about doing their bookkeeping just in terms of their deductions. But in reality, it's like you might be doing your bookkeeping to show I made $4,000 last year. So then the IRS can't say, well, we think you made $10,000. And so we want $2,000 in taxes from you. Gets tricky. Okay. So you were kind of in business, doing your DJ thing for 10 years. You really considered yourself a business for a few years. So what was the triggering point that made you realize, oh, I need to unfuck my biz? Like, how did you find me to start? Let's start there. How did you find me to start?
Sure. Well, I'll answer this first. So I was in for a couple months mid last summer, when I realized I hadn't worked live events. So think of last summer. February, oh my gosh, it might have been a year now, was like my last in-person, congregated occasion that I had DJ'd live. And when we hit summer, I was thinking, my gosh, we're going to be in this for a bit. And when things go back to normal, when things are more optimal for me to be out there, I cannot continue to do things the way I've been doing on a financial level, in a sales process level, in every sense. So while it was light in my schedule, I wanted to just improve some of the things I needed to do, take care of things I had swept under the rug, back taxes and things like that. But it's just such an overwhelming concept to grasp. So I hit up a mutual friend of ours, Holly Gray, who I'm an active member with in Tuesdays Together Los Angeles. I put something in our Facebook group. I said, help, who can help with small business tax finance stuff and unfuck this shit show, really, in your term. And then literally Holly hit me direct and she tagged you. And after her, you were just like, there was nobody else. It was just you. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly the guy. And I think before I even reached out to you, well, your branding is super solid. So you captivated me that way. Your Instagram's really easy to read. You have these like quick bullet point things. And then your podcast, I listen to religiously. That was my first engagement with you in terms of being introduced to your content. And then I think later in the fall, you had done like a promo for your Unfuck Your Biz course.
Right.
And I wasn't one of those who's like, here it is, like, let me just sign up. Let me go back to you with my relationship with money. So to me, when I saw the investment price, I was like, oh my God, that's like way too much. I cannot do that or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like I loosely had the money, like I had it in savings, but I'm like, I don't want to do it. So in my mind, I was like making excuses. Oh, I could just do this next year. I could do this. I could have somebody else do it. But I think what really attracted me, in addition to your vibe, and I think we connected in unsaid ways, is you are teaching people the process of understanding of how business operation works versus if I just didn't want to deal with it, sure, I could have somebody else do it. A, it would be like way more in price if that was my concern still. And B, I still wouldn't have an understanding of how things work. It's like, okay, it's handled, but me as a business owner, I should know even a little bit of how things work. Would I still have known about quarterlies? I don't know. No, because somebody else is doing it. You know what I mean? So I think why I've continued to stick along. I'm in your alumni course is I'm constantly being introduced to new information. I'm revisiting new things and I'm being held accountable to stay on track because it's not like your course in the 2 months, right? About 2.5 months.
Yeah. It's 10 weeks. So about 2.5 months.
The work does not stop there. So I initially treated, I think I told you this before, as now that I take a step back and I reflect on those 2.5 months, I think I treated that timeline as like a movie preview of your course. And really I'm getting the ground running now.
Nice.
So it was like theory then, and I was being a little bit active, but really now I'm rolling up my sleeves to get things going.
Yeah. I think that like some people really need that. Like this is kind of how I operate. Usually when I sign up for courses, I go through them twice. So I go through it once and watch all the videos, like pretty passively. I'll like watch them, listen while I'm making dinner because I need to really understand like the full scope of what's in the program. And then I go back through a second time and actually do all of the work. So I do think you mentioned the investment. And what I found, Courtney, is first of all, like there's a shit ton of content. So like that's why the price point is what it is, right? But also it's one of those things where people have to invest if they're going to get the work out of it because
I agree.
I mean, it's a lot. Like I never promise anyone that they're going to join the program and like work for 15 minutes a week and like have their entire business life together in 10 weeks.
What I do like now that I'm after that hump of that thinking, I think if people were to be like, was it worth it? I'm like, it's price. It's a yes. Like I honestly, I almost wish I didn't do that sooner. You know, it's like the insecurity of getting started and making these excuses because let's be honest, this subject of money, it's not attractive to a lot of people. It's scary. And I'd say you do a really fine job about making these, baby steps on getting towards the right direction and very clear in your content. But it's one of the reasons why I've stuck around.
Well, that's always the goal, right? Sometimes easier said than done, but that's what we strive to do. So Courtney, in your round of Unfuck Your Biz, we had a lot more newbies than usual. So typically we only have 1 or 2 brand new business owners, and we have a higher volume of more established business owners. In this round, you were probably the most experienced business owner in the program.
Interesting.
Did you feel that way when you were in there?
No, I didn't. Maybe because in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm starting over in that way. In that sense, I felt new. I don't think me having the experience I did helped, nor did it wasn't like a problem. You know what I mean? I think I came in wanting to roll up my sleeves and understand process. I mean, granted, there are some things that I still need a refresher on constantly, but in terms of I didn't feel, maybe there's an area of like maybe money I owed or something that wouldn't necessarily benefit knowledge to someone.
Yeah, I think part of it may have been we didn't really have anyone in your class who already had a lot of their stuff together. And by
Yeah.
that, I mean, in the previous round of Unfuck Your Biz, I had 5 or 6 students who already had their LLCs formed and were in the program because they wanted to form S Corps and hire employees. And
Oh,
in your
wow.
round, in your round, like a lot of people were brand new, and the people who weren't new were kind of like, well, I never did any of this, so I'm really
almost glad that
starting
I
from
was
you in this
starting
respect.
with this cohort then. I'm glad because I think I
Well, no,
would have.
it's a good mixture because you can also
Sure.
learn from those people too.
No, absolutely. I think so too. But I think, I mean, our class too, I don't know if this is if it's like this for your other terms, but it felt intimate to me.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if that's intentful. I mean, there's always drop-offs like throughout there, but even in the end, I think we were tight-knit. Some of us are in your alumni program. We check on each other. You've created that culture and space for us. And I also feel that in areas where I'm insecure about my finances, I feel safe to talk about it in our group setting. I mean, I think yesterday in our alumni group, like even pulling up a contract, that's like very personal, I think, to some people, or like a message from the IRS, like that's very personal. So, but I feel like you've created that safe space where like, here, this is what it looks like. And it's educational for everybody. Like,
I mean, we kind of have to, because everyone's in the same boat. I was talking to a fellow tax attorney on that Clubhouse chat you were on. We can talk about that more in a little bit. But I asked her, and we don't have statistics for this, but what percentage of the American population has gotten a letter from the IRS or had some kind of back tax at some point in their life? And I would guess that it's at least like 70%.
Really?
Yeah, because not everyone like gets behind on taxes, but at some point we all like check a box wrong on our tax return and we get a letter and we're like, oh, okay, I picked the wrong thing and I have to like tweak it this way. Like the IRS sends letters for everything. It's a lot more common than most people realize, which is why I always tell people not to freak out. Right. So on that note, Courtney, let's talk about what you did in the program. So you formed 2 LLCs, didn't you?
Yes, I formed 2 LLCs, and that was I don't think it would have gotten done if it weren't for your LLC party that you hosted in class. So like
it's so easy, right? Like I never, like, it's always funny.
It is really easy to the point where my first LLC years ago, or that I thought I was doing it right, I can't believe I paid someone to do it. Like almost like just because because it sounds so formal and it seems so unattainable as a regular mortal being, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, because there's all this jargon that overwhelms you. And it's kind of like that whole example that you say, like, I didn't use LegalZoom. I used something else. Or I think I actually used an attorney. I was like, I cannot believe I paid someone to do that when I could have done that myself.
Yeah. And what I also tell people is that it's like forming the LLC is the easy part. It's all the stuff that comes after that, right? So it's all the notices you get. It's the franchise tax. It's the statement of information. It's the operating agreement. If you're hiring an attorney, they should do all of that for you. Right. But when I used to do this for people, like I started out charging $500 and that quickly went to $2,000. And if I'd kept going, it probably would be like $4,000 now. But really what takes so long is I need all of your information and there's all these documents we have to fill out. You're really, in a large sense, you would just be paying me for a shit ton of paperwork. So it's like, as from an attorney perspective, you have a mountain of student debt and it's a high overhead job. You have to charge for your time, but a lot of your time is spent doing like pretty uncomplicated stuff in reality. In this avenue, at least. Okay. So aside from your LLCs, what else did you tackle like in the program?
In the program, I also was slowly getting more into putting soft systems in place. Like it wasn't, I think I went a roundabout way of doing that. So in terms of where is my money going, or where's my money coming from and where is it going? So I have this thing I dub Finance Fridays, where every Friday I like take my receipt. So I have this envelope with those little envelope with the plastic dividers.
Yeah, like a little file folder.
Yeah, it goes with me. It's in my purse. Every purchase I make, whether it's personal, business related, if I'm at the store and I have to do 2 types of purchase, I separate those purchases and I separate those into little dividers. Like, okay, this was groceries. Okay, I had to buy a bunch of office supplies. And then every Friday, take the business ones and I log it into my Excel sheet. And my mind was even though this is like a simple concept, I just hadn't implemented it. I recently did this photo shoot and it really kept me on pace on how much I was spending on this photo shoot, because I think I would have just, it was an expense, or I would have not accounted for it. You know what I mean?
Because you were buying props at Target every other day and like
Right.
copy clothes for the photo shoot.
Exactly. And just little, props really is where it came in. I was like, oh wow. Or like even Amazon or online purchases. So when I get those in, I just tag, I don't want to deal. I usually want to batch those types of things. Like it's a waste of time if I try to log it in right then and there. I put those in a folder called expenses. And then once they're logged, it's in 2021 expenses recorded. So I don't have to deal with them. So I don't think I would have started doing that if it weren't for at least having a soft understanding of putting some sort of routine in place with money.
And that's the thing, right? So a lot of these processes don't have to be complicated, and there's not a right way to do them. This is also why I believe so much in a conceptual understanding of taxes and deductions, because I can give you like an exact system to do, but at the end of the day, if you understand what you can deduct and you know what what kind of record keeping the IRS wants from you, then you can create your own Finance Fridays and separate everything in your email and create your own little, very simple system that works for you.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, where I think most people don't get started on this journey at all because it's like, it seems so overwhelming. And it's really, if you just do little small changes that keep you somewhat aware of your finances, it puts you in a better place, actually. Like, I don't think I have the most sophisticated, I'm not even using legit software yet. You know what I mean? Like it's not QuickBooks. Like I'm using a Google spreadsheet is what I'm using currently until I move everything over.
That's fine. I love me a Google Sheet. I'm all about it. We have so many like Google Sheet templates in the course too. I'm all about Google Sheet. So let's talk about, you also had some back tax stuff you were dealing with in the course. How are you feeling about that now?
I think before, how I got to where it was I just didn't understand how it worked. Like, so I would send my taxes off, and for many years, and I'm not many years back tax. I think it's now 2 now. And one was a very, well, in my mind, a high amount. It was like $3,000. No, actually when I talked to you, I thought it was 8, but then is it Teresa, when she helped me read the form, she's like, girl, it's actually $3,000. She's like, no, those are credits or something. I literally was like a sigh of relief.
I'm pretty sure what it was your tax. So your tax for that year was $8,000, but you'd already you paid $5,000 when you filed your return. So your balance was $3,000.
Okay. Yeah. I did not read it that way. So I kind of just not ignored, but yeah, I guess ignored actually, like, okay, I'll just deal with it. And it had been a couple years. And then when I file, and so I don't have a problem filing every year. Like I feel like I get to that point, but then I'm such on the sigh of relief train. Like, okay, I'm already done with last year in terms of filing, that I'm already on to the new year trying to deal with that, overpromising myself this year I'm going to get it together, because getting that data was such a headache. You know what I mean? And it's just like what I learned in your course was, if you just bookending these years so you can just keep going, or else it just snowballs into this big effect. So with the back tax, I paid one of the years in full, which I had no plan of doing. So I'm going to make this reference to like my relationship with money. The money is in my savings, but I have this visual thing where, okay, when I see money in my account, it's like, okay, there's money in my account. I want to keep it in there. And it's not that I have a problem. Like I'm fine with debt. Like I pay credit cards off. I'm on time, but for some reason, like paying things in that big of a chunk in full give me so much anxiety. It's because it looks like, oh, then I'm not going to have that money anymore. Like it's a psychological thing, but I owe that money though, which is like you owe that money. But I guess the flip side and good positive thing is at least I have that money to take care of it. And so that's what, after I listened to that conversation with you and Teresa, it was like, you know what, literally after that call, I just did it. And I think I even sent you a freaking video. I'm like, look what I did.
Yeah, you sent me screenshots, and I kept those because I might put them in the course textbook at some point. I'm gonna take your name off of it.
Sure.
Or now I've identified it, so people will know that it's yours.
Or if anybody wants to pay that one off for me, go for it. You know.
Oh yeah, you can go pay the balance for Courtney, but you're almost there. So are you on an installment agreement for that balance, or are you just planning on knocking out in like a month?
So that was for one of the years. I just literally after that call with Teresa, that Clubhouse conversation with Teresa, I paid it in full.
Okay. So it's all done.
I did, but I have a 1 year that's a random $500 freaking or so. I'm like, okay, just freaking take care of that. I've got to do that. And I have last year's to do. So I took care of the oldest first because that was the one probably accruing more interest. And so before I didn't have a concept of the interest, and that's where now the quarterlies make sense to me. You know what I mean? In terms of getting ahead of that, that was like maybe $1,000 worth of interest, I think.
Yeah. And see, your quarterlies are charged, and you know this from the course, obviously, I'm telling our listeners, the interest is charged by month. So when you don't pay quarterly taxes, you're automatically being charged interest. Most people don't realize this.
So, and because it's so small, you don't feel it like month to month. It's when I open up for that year, and when I looked at the breakdown, I'm like literally $999 on interest if I just even took care of it in the littlest sense, like $100 a month or something.
Yeah, because yours was, I mean, it was a 2 to 3 year old debt. So yours was like $2,000 in tax and $1,000 in penalties and interest.
Correct.
If you paid it when you filed taxes in 2018, so a lot of the tax would have been 9 months, 6 months, and 3 months late because of your quarterlies, your penalty and interest probably would have been like $300. But it continues to grow. If you pay it on time, obviously no penalty and interest.
So what also confused me even more was, okay, so that was that year. Now I was getting new documents for another year. And I thought that was the same because I don't know how to read an IRS document. They all look the same to me. They're so dry. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I thought that was for that year. I'm like, oh, it's only that. I'm like, okay, I'll take care of it. Now I filed for this. So it's just a snowball effect if you don't take care of it.
I'm going to be updating our course textbook for the next round with more images of IRS tax forms explaining what they are and how to read them.
Speaking of images, I just have this negative, opinion about any government website just because the navigation of them are so terrible. But what I was pleasantly surprised was that portal that I was showing you. It actually had really clear breakdowns of what year. And I was not expecting that from something of the IRS website to have that. Like there was your past portals, any money that came in through any relief during COVID, if you qualified for that, or everything's divided by year. And so I wasn't expecting that. I thought you had to come through like knowing already based on the snail mail forms you got, which I'm not the most organized in that sense, but digitally I am. So that spoke well to me seeing a portal on the IRS page.
So speaking of taxes, the IRS, all that, are you currently saving for your quarterly taxes now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, for this, year. It's not, well, given my event situation, what I can, I'm still wrapping my head on like anticipating like income in because my work is so as booked as I get. It's not regular, but what I do now is any income that I do get, I percentage it out now, like and put things into the proper accounts they need to be in, which is, I'm still fine tuning. But in terms of, let's say, just for the sake of an even number, let's say $1,000 comes in. I know in my head, that's not my $1,000 to take. I need to put 20 to 30% off for taxes already and put it in a way that I don't touch savings, expenses. And then I'm slowly building a system of like the whole paying myself out thing. Cause that still is new for me. That's a weird category for me to
your salary.
My salary, that one.
Well, so right now you're doing it kind of manually. Once you get, the great thing is you're in the alumni membership, so we can touch base on this like, every week if we wanted to, but really like every month, every 2 months. And once the events start to pick it back up, then I'm going to encourage you to definitely automate this.
Automate it.
At that point, you'll have a better sense of like a monthly, more cyclical income process.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I'm a snail's pace on that. And I recognize that with the automation, and that's for everything. So my idea of automation, that's like the last thing for me to get on. And it's weird because it's not like I'm not completely tech savvy or I don't understand. I think it's a control thing. Would you say probably? Is it like, oh, I'm making those?
Yeah, probably. Because it's like, really, I promise you, it's going to make your life so much easier. Like we've done a few of the other student interviews and they've already started their automations. And it's always fun because everyone is always shocked at how much money is in their savings account when they're automating it. Because the difference is, like for you, Courtney, you don't ever have to look at that $1,000. It's just the tax is automatically taken out, and you look at your bank account and you're like, oh, I made $700 this week because the other 300's already been taken out.
Right.
So you don't have to like go over that mental hurdle. Okay, let me talk to you a little bit about logistics. So How did you feel about like the video and tech support in the course?
I loved your website portal where is at Kajabi where all the videos lived. I love that. I really enjoyed how everything is at your own pace, and there was copy, the book, that corresponded to those videos, and the videos were bite-sized pieces, so very digestible. For the sake of like my workflow, Trello wasn't my strong suit. I found myself using that last, and I think really strictly wasn't how you use it. It's because I am in other CRMs that I know how those work, and Trello is different. It's all a preference for that. But I would say success for a student in your course is really showing up to the meetings. Like for the Q&A, that's where the biggest value is. And it's like total FOMO. If you weren't there, you miss out. Yes, there's recap videos, but being present really helps because it keeps you accountable. But the videos in tandem with the book were easy to navigate. But the only thing that was difficult for me were just concepts. So it wasn't like, oh, I couldn't find anything. It was like, if I couldn't wrap my head around something, it was the content, not so much the
right. And then we talk about it like during our calls. So a couple things we're doing in the next round. So you know that I did an audiobook version for our course textbook. So that'll be available to new students. And what I'm also going to be doing is taking the Q&As from our weekly Q&As recordings, and I'm going to be posting those onto the same audio feed as recordings.
Oh, so okay.
People can listen to them like
passively,
their podcast episodes.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to I guess students have different learning styles. So if they're keen on listening, your videos really paved my development in the course, mainly because I think I could go back and you also had visual like graphs and content on your videos.
Yes.
And I could pause and like reference those. I felt the book and the videos went hand in hand. Like did not.
That's kind of how the videos are designed to give you like a snapshot. So that I always tell people, if you don't have time to do all the homework and read the book before the call, try to take like 10 minutes to a half an hour to watch the videos.
That's the bare minimum I'd say. Like to any student that is about to take your program, I would highly suggest, given my experience in your course, I would say just doing the videos is not going to cut it though. Like you do need to do the reading work because that actually is the framework of your homework, right?
Yeah, the videos, because from my perspective, the videos will give you enough context to understand what the questions people are asking are when you get onto the Q&A calls, but then you'll need to circle back to the text to actually work through it all yourself in detail. So much good information you've shared, Courtney. We're going to start to wrap up here. What I would love to ask you, and this is a question I ask all my guests now, relatively new question. You obviously are in my Facebook group, Braden's Besties. We are besties, of course. If anyone wants to become a bestie of Courtney, DJ Dazzler, where would they go to do that?
I am super active on Instagram and Twitter, but mostly Instagram. You get to, and that's at DJ_Dazzler, DAZZLER. I do a mix of, my work, and then you get to know me as a person. It's very clear of who I am in that sense. So people get to know me in that space outside of my world in music as well. And I'm a big fan of supporting other people, whether it's causes, social justice things that fit in my value frame, supporting small businesses. So you'll see that come up in stories a lot as I help push and elevate our community.
And if people listening have questions about the course, do you mind if they reach out to you to ask you questions about it?
They absolutely can. Most definitely.
Okay, cool. Because I know, some people are always hesitant to reach out to me directly.
Sure.
So if you want a fair, honest take, I'm sure most of the students that we have on the podcast will find that. So Courtney, thanks again so much for coming on the episode. I'd love to have you here.
Thank you so much, Braden.